Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here. Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here.
A small rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio,
your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Wait, talk about hot stories. I don't think there's anything as hot right now as this Obi-Wan Kenobi series. The news was just breaking last week as we were discussing all things Star Wars and Disney on the last episode of Rebel Force Radio, so we've got a little more time to digest it, us and as well as those in the traditional and the mainstream media, breaking it down, seeing what this could bring to us as Star Wars fans. We've got more of that coming up on this show. We will be getting into our speculation as to what an Obi-Wan Kenobi series starring Ewan McGregor and potentially directed by Ewan McGregor could mean to us. Also, we talked about this last week on the show. It was brought up, Otis Frampton, and he's a comic book writer and illustrator. And we mentioned him alongside our discussion about Tusken Raiders and what that culture is like, and that led us to talk about this pitch that Otis has had sort of ongoing. He's doing these great sort of mock-up covers of what a JAWA Adventures comic book series could look like. He's going to be joining us in the cantina. So we were talking about Otis. Otis reached out to us. And he'll be joining us later on in the program here. And what program is that? It is Rebel Force Radio, this week's show for August 22nd, 2019. So great to have you with us. Man, oh man, there's always so much to talk about these days as Star Wars fans. So you're in the right place for Star Wars conversation. And with me, as always, to do that and so much more, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Jason, I am totally on board with everything you were saying. You were preaching to the choir. There is so much great Star Wars news to be talking about with D23 coming up this weekend and all the rumors about Kenobi, the Mandalorian, the Rise of Skywalker, and the future of Star Wars. So we are really looking forward to what's happening in Anaheim this weekend. And we're going to get together and talk about it next week on Rebel Force Radio. Don't look at us to be breaking any news because you're already going to know all these hot news stories by the time our next show comes out. So I think we were talking about maybe doing a listener feedback show and doing live calls, possibly on YouTube next week. So stay tuned to our social media networks and, of course, rebelforceradio.com, and we'll be putting all the information there if that's the direction we're going in next week. Of course, always in motion is the future. And so, yeah, looking forward to D23. A couple of quick housekeeping notes here I have. Number one, thank you to loyal Rebel Force Radio listener and Patreon community member Matt Rashid. A lot of people know Matt's name because he is often a host of Rebel Force Radio Q&A with myself. And we were talking about some cool action figures and customizable action figures. And Matt scored himself a 3D printer and created for me a couple customized 3 3/4-inch light bulb droids from the Lars Homestead in A New Hope, a.k.a. the 2X3K PR perimeter security droid. And this is a weird, I've always called it just simply the light bulb droid, because what it is basically a treadwell, a lower part, and then instead of having that stalk with the weird binoculars on top of it or whatever, it's just a light bulb. And you see it rolling past Luke and 3PO in A New Hope.
Right.
Yeah, the light bulb droid. And you see it, rolling past Luke and 3PO as they're trying to find R2 in the dark. He had run away in A New Hope. And you see that thing going by there, and it was something that always caught my eye and captured my attention. So Matt created for me a 3D printed action figure of that droid. So thank you, Matt.
That's awesome.
And Jason, didn't somebody finally take care of your retro vintage action figure Jones?
Oh my gosh! Yes, indeed. So, if you're new to the program, you may not know that I kind of went on a little rant because I was just so upset that these retro vintage action figures, this series of 6 figures that harken back to the days of 1978, when Star Wars action figures were brand new onto the scene. And I was just so annoyed that they made these very, very difficult. They started out as a Target exclusive, and it was right around Father's Day. And I was really frustrated because despite the fact that, they were so much promotion, there was so much hype coming out of Star Wars Celebration, they were still ridiculously hard to find. And they actually buried them in the clothing section of Target. Wait. And then they would say it like you'd say, well, I'm looking for this. Oh, did you check the clothing section? Now, Jim, you were ahead of things.
Yeah.
But at the time that you made this discovery and announced it on the show, I happened to be out of town. I wasn't able to be on the show. And it was when Billy Mack was filling in for me. And so I missed it. And I didn't pick up on the cues that they were back in the clothing section, the men's clothing section. So, I went on and I complained like I do, and there were several that reached out, but Eric, I don't want to give his last name, but Eric, we'll say Eric with a K. He had reached out and he said, "Well, I've got these. Are you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm absolutely interested." And he said, "Look, all I want is just, what I paid for them. I want the retail price." And I said, I don't feel right about just doing that. You're going to some trouble. I mean, obviously, I'm going to take care of shipping. I want to just a little something extra. So I sent him a little something extra, and I should have sent him more because what I got, it wasn't like a used Amazon Prime box with some tissue paper or stuck. He shipped me a sealed case from Hasbro, never opened, of all 6 figures.
I'm like Homer Simpson.
Yeah, I was blown away. He never
Minty
said
fresh.
that. He never said, well, mine could command a little bit higher price because they're minty fresh case. He didn't do any of it. He didn't extort nothing. For all I knew, he was just throwing 6 figures into a box, throwing some tissue paper and shipping them out to me. And what I got was so much more. And man, oh man, I'm just so indebted to him. So thank you, Eric, very, very much. You know who you are. And they are. So what I want to do is I want to get some actual pegboard for the Rebel Force Radio studios with some pegs. Very inspired by YouTuber Michael Mercy, who has the 80s Toy Museum. And what he's done is he's kind of made it look like you're going back in time to his toy store in the 80s, and he's got all of these vintage figures on card, and some of them are, re-releases, like anniversary editions, retro, vintage, but they all have a very 80s original vintage vibe, and he's got them hanging on pegs, and I just love that look. So that's what I think I'm going to do, courtesy of Eric, and inspired by Michael Mercer. By the way, if you're on YouTube and looking for some great stuff, go over to Rebel Force Radio's YouTube. No, yeah, of course you got to go to Rebel Force Radio's YouTube channel, but after that, check out Michael Mercy. He's got some great stuff, and a good friend of our show here. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do with those, because those figures on those cards are just screaming to be hanging from pegs.
Yeah, well, and I also like the fact that it's instantly interchangeable, where you can change displays on a whim when you have a pegboard without having to worry about putting more nails into the wall or thumbtacks or whatever you use. I do know that there's one guy who's going to be very relieved to hear that you finally scored these retro vintage figures, and that's our video game expert, Barry Harmon from SegaBits.com.
Oh, Barry, the one that made sure that you were taken care of.
I feel so guilty because, like, Barry combs all the local stores in Chicago, most notably in the west suburbs and closer to the city. And he's on top of it, and he scored for me, but he didn't score for you, and thus leading to a swank meltdown on the show that it stung poor little, Barry. He's a young man with feelings. He's very sensitive about making sure everyone has all the action figures they need. So he'll be I was just hanging out with him, and we did a big RFR Patreon meetup at the Galloping Ghost Arcade, the world's largest video game arcade in Brookfield, Illinois on Ogden Avenue. And RFR Patreon member Bob Pasco was visiting Chicago this week from Atlanta, and he wanted to meet up at the Ghost, and that's what I do with RFR Patreon members and any Star Wars fan who wants to hang out and play some vintage video games. We meet up at the Galloping Ghost Arcade in Brookfield and have a good old time. They have great Star Wars games there, et cetera. And so when I hear about somebody coming in from out of town, I put up the bat signal, and local Star Wars fans come and hang out. Barry Harmon was there. Chris Mocked.
Do you play like the Ewok horn, the do-do-do-do, and then all of a sudden, just all over the greater Midwest comes everybody onto the Galloping Ghost?
Dude, I have to upgrade to that Ewok horn because what I'm using is the Gungan thing from episode 1 where it's like
that's not nearly as cool as the Ewok.
It's like a didgeridoo, and I'm such a failure at it.
You need that Ewok horn, man.
Yeah, I don't have that. But so, yeah, we had a great crew of Star Wars fans local to the Chicago area. Barry Harmon, Chris Mock, Tyler Page, and Brian Klein. We all met up and hung out at the Galloping Ghost and moved over to Brixie's, where we drank many pitchers of IPAs until last call. So that was it. Yeah, Billy Mack would have been there, but he had to work.
Oh, man.
And so we're letting everyone know on our Patreon page when these happen again. And there's a lot of people who are Patreon members who also live in the Chicago area. So we're going to have a good old time. You find yourself coming into the Chicago area on business or what have you, reach out, and we'll have an RFR meetup. And those are always a lot of fun.
I need another take at Galloping Ghost because, as you know, my one and only Galloping Ghost experience, we had a real downer with us that day. That night. And so I need another take.
Yeah, we had Debbie Downer was with us. And Jason, you ended up having to babysit Debbie Downer all night long. And that took you out of the game, man.
I did. The only thing that was good is I had Sheldon's boy Chase with me. And he was trying to sort of, I think Chase was with us, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chase was with us, and he was trying. He was trying. There's another good guy.
We're going to make it happen again. We'll make it happen again. And I would love to do it for your birthday, but your birthday is next week, and I don't know if we could get everyone together, but I just want to take a moment to say happy birthday, Jason Swank, here on Rebel Force Radio. I hope you get a lot of great Star Wars stuff and, of course, sugary treats on your birthday, because I know you have a real sugar tooth, a real sweet tooth. So happy birthday, Jason.
Thank you.
That's the 26th, correct?
It is. No, it's not even close. I am as old as Star Wars. So whenever Star Wars has a big birthday or anniversary, it's mine as well. So I'm happy to be tied to that. It's like Harry Potter tied to Voldemort, you know?
So let's see. Star Wars came out in 1977, so that means you're 10, 20... Oh,
I didn't know that. So I got a sweet tooth for birthday cake, but I also got a sweet tooth for big Star Wars news. So let's get right into it.
I've good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
So the whole entertainment, journalist, industrial complex is a-buzzing, and of course Star Wars fans all over the country, all over the world, rather, rejoicing at the news that the abandoned Obi-Wan Kenobi film, or trilogy, as it was sometimes being reported, that was apparently canceled after the less than stellar performance of the Solo film, has been given new life as a series on Disney Plus. And that was breaking news last week. We mentioned it in passing, but let's sort of maybe break it down a little bit more. Let's start with the Hollywood Reporter. Now, Hollywood Reporter is drawing some interesting conclusions. But before we get into that, I think in all fairness, we should really talk about what has been officially, what is official and what is not. And the reality is Lucasfilm nor Disney have confirmed this. I am correct in this, right, Jim? At this point.
No, I mean, sources, big sources like Variety, like the Hollywood Reporter, reached out to Lucasfilm for confirmation, or they reached out to whatever source they have, and they did receive that confirmation.
Oh, they did? Oh.
Yeah. Okay. I know Variety did. Look at the Variety story. They were reacting to, apparently, someone either at Lucasfilm or Disney, or maybe even with Ewan McGregor's people, they decided to reach out to a lot of different news sources, and start spreading the word in the middle of last week that Ewan is in talks for Kenobi film. So naturally, any news source worth its weight is going to follow up and try to get some sort of confirmation from a reliable source within one of those three areas: Disney, Lucasfilm, or Ewan McGregor and his people. So they know who to call, and they will run with the story if they get backing, some sort of backup on it, and that's what happened with this story. So, it has been vetted that at the very least, Ewan is in talks to return as the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi in no longer a feature film, but now a spin-off series, a Star Wars series on Disney Plus. And also, along with that rumor, has arisen some information that, and this is all still rumor at this point, but Ewan has been enticed back to the role, not only as an actor, but as a director for a few episodes. And Ewan has been in the director's chair recently. He just was promoting a movie recently that he had directed, 2016's American Pastoral. And, of course, when he was out talking about that film, people naturally all started to ask him about Star Wars. And Ewan has, as we've reported on the show many, many times, Ewan most certainly has indicated that he is more than interested in returning to the role.
I think the story between Episode 3 and Episode 4, I think there's a story there. I think that's the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, if there is one, is after sort of the one that bridges my Obi-Wan Kenobi and Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And because there's, 20 years, I don't know how long he's in the desert there, but there's got to be 20 or 30 years.
Well, have you had the conversations?
I'm not sure that I'm at liberty to say, really. But I think that I'm very interested in doing that. That would be great.
Well, I would say that, for example, right now, I'm at StarWars.com, and I see absolutely no mention of this.
No, of course not.
I just want to make sure that we're being fair here. This is probably what we could call 99% confirmed.
Well, if
this
he
is
signs,
as confirmed as it gets.
If he signs, but I mean, I think they're going to pull it off. They'll do whatever it takes to get Ewan back, especially now that the story is leaked. Again, all arrows pointing toward D23, and it'll be announced there. It's as close to being a done deal as possible. I understand people, want to stay on the fence and go, until I hear absolute confirmation, I'm not buying it. But the weather report says a tornado is coming our way. we're not going to wait for confirmation that the tornado is actually here. We're going to go down in the basement and lock up the doors.
Yeah, I'm not going to stand in my driveway and wait for that confirmation.
Yeah.
But as this show is released, D23 will have already likely had its Disney Plus panel at 3:30.
Is that when it's happening?
Yeah, it's 3:30 on Friday.
So yeah, our show will be coming out at approximately that time. So
okay.
So you know what, baloney. I'm getting the show out early this week. I'm going to get I'm getting a jump on all this. I'm not releasing the show right when D23 is breaking. The show's coming out early. It's coming out early this week. So you've been warned. Well, how can I warn you? The show hasn't been released yet. But when you hear this, you'll know.
So anyway, there's a story on over at Hollywood Reporter talking about, well, what could this series be about? And they give two different examples. They say, could The Unforgiven or The Untouchables, little Chicago reference there, be reference points for the Ewan McGregor-led Disney show? And they say it's not inconceivable to think that given the massive budgets Disney Plus has set for their series, that we could see some de-aging effects on McGregor in order to explore his early days as a Jedi apprentice. But exploring the Jedi's lost days and transition into a hermit on Tatooine seems more compelling, both narrative and performance-wise. It's funny that they're even throwing that out as a possibility. I got to admit, it never occurred to me in a million years, and I still think that it's very unlikely that we would be seeing Ewan McGregor trying to reprise, an Episode 1 era or even pre-Episode 1 era Obi-Wan, despite the fact that Hollywood has made incredible strides in de-aging techniques. We've got a film coming up. It's going to be a Netflix exclusive with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa, where they're using some de-aging techniques. Will Smith has been de-aged recently. I mean, this has been going on. We've got X-Men films that have had this. But, Jim, from a storytelling standpoint, I don't think that's the most compelling place to even begin with an Obi-Wan series.
No. And where would you go?
I would go right to between the trilogies, between episodes.
Yes.
Episodes 3 and 4.
Yes.
That's the meat of.
Right. Yeah. That's where the real story is. John Jackson Miller, who wrote the Kenobi novel that places an Obi-Wan adventure right into that timeline there, is noting a resurgence in sales of his novel from a few years ago. I think he was at a convention of some sort this week and sold out of everything. So he's ready for the wave to hit, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But his novel is great, and so I suggest you check that out. Kenobi is the simple name of it, and it really does sort of it definitely gives you a taste and a sense of where this Kenobi series could be heading. Of course, the dark times when he's in exile, when he's communicating with Qui-Gon Jinn as a Force spirit. Let's see Liam Neeson finally make that appearance as a ghost in Star Wars. I thought we'd see it in Episode 3 for sure, but we never saw it.
Yeah, the motorcycle accident.
That's one of the stories, but we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah,
that Liam
did some voiceover work, which was in a cut scene.
And remember, he did return to voice the character in the Clone Wars,
right?
With the big Mortis trilogy, and then he came back another time in the season 6. So lots of love for Liam Neeson. It's obviously massive. Oh, yeah, sure, I've been sitting around waiting for the call. I thought a Qui-Gon series would be perfect.
No, it's Qui-Gon.
Oh, yeah, I get confused sometimes. I say it the right way and I say it the wrong way. My preferred way is Qui-Gon. Thank you for reminding me of that there, Swank, old boy. Maybe you and me should get together and have a Guinness and maybe a pack of Marlboros.
All right. Liam. Sorry, Liam.
Oh, yeah.
Got Ewan on the brain.
Well,
a story that could tie up some of the loose ends about Qui-Gon and Dooku, and I would love to see a Qui-Gon series. I'd love to see a Dooku series. Those characters from the prequels, where so much was left unsaid. I think it's just ripe with opportunity. But we'll focus here on Obi-Wan.
Yeah,
Kenobi.
get focused, why don't you? You know, you're going off on this Qui-Gon trail. They're obviously not going to do that.
All right, Liam.
Because,
Enough.
you know, you got to put Kitster in there somewhere, you know.
No.
Oh, he's a fabulous young man.
We finally found Kitster.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, all right. So one of the sources that they cite as possibly being fodder for this series, and I got to say, I mean, here you got the Hollywood Reporter citing all of these different novels, comics that have really chronicled Obi-Wan's days following Order 66. They're throwing out the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnson. They're throwing out Jason Aaron and Simone Bianchi's Star Wars number 7 from the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, The Last of His Breed, going back to 2015. They're also throwing out in the same series Star Wars number 20. Again, Jason Aaron and Mike Mayhew, where they're talking about how Kenobi becomes something of a gunslinger figure, and that the series could easily take place within the time period and allow Kenobi dealing with the growing crime of Mos Eisley while struggling to keep his Jedi past concealed in a reworking of Clint Eastwood's The Unforgiven. So if you've got... Now, Kanan kind of had that sort of thing going on where he had to keep his Jedi past hidden. But I love this idea of Kenobi being the... like The Unforgiven.
Well, just say it, the Cowboy Jedi.
The Cowboy Jedi. That's exactly what it is.
Well, that's of how they promoted Kanan. But did Kanan ever live up to that? I don't think he ever did. I think he was the Cowboy Jedi before Star Wars Rebels even began. You know, I would have liked to have seen more of that gunslinger from Kanan. You really don't.
A little bit in that first season.
Yeah, in the first season.
There were some cool moments where, you know, he'd kind of look around and he'd grab that two-piece lightsaber that he had, snap it together, and, you know, make some quick work of some guys. But you're right. I mean, he didn't really have that man of mystery thing going on.
I would like to see a Jedi fully commit to life without the lightsaber. Leave the lightsaber at home. None of these fancy snap-together models that confuse and conceal. You know, let's leave that home. Let's start a life without the dogma of the Jedi, without living under that umbrella of that constant devotion to being a Jedi. Let's see Obi-Wan struggle with the new normal. Life without the Jedi Knights, life without the organized, comforting home of the temple and Yoda and the hierarchy with the council and everything and the way they worked with the government. It was all, now he's on his own, and yeah, he can practice his spirituality to himself at home, but when he's out and about, maybe Obi-Wan goes through a gritty period where he has to adjust to society and the way things have been shaken up in the post-Clone Wars era.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see that. I suspect that when he's in the Mos Eisley Cantina during the events of A New Hope, that you could take it a couple of different ways. You could say he really understood that he was truly going on his last adventure, and he was fulfilling his destiny as the guardian of the son of the chosen one, and that would be the moment where he would say, the hell with it, and he pulls out the lightsaber and he does what he does in the cantina. Or you could assume, well, you know, every once in a while when the sugar hits the fan, he pulls out that lightsaber and does his thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a lot of speculation that we can throw down about this series, but I really think that maybe we should hold off on that until it's officially announced, which we think will be happening this weekend. And then let's open up the phone lines and hear what everyone else has to say about it too, because, there's a lot to be said about a series like this, but There's also a lot of news I want to get to this week, too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, because we could fill a whole show easily on
We could.
what
We could.
could be the Kenobi series. It's going to be a lot of fun to speculate about this series as it's in development, and we're waiting for it to premiere.
Well, since I'm talking to a Chicago guy, I do have to throw out their other theory. They had two theories. The first theory was the Western Unforgiven style. The other one was the Untouchables. And could Obi-Wan Kenobi be wrapped in some of the plot threads that were opened up in the Solo film? Crimson Dawn, the organized crime on Tatooine. Could he find himself ensnared in some of that? So
I would love that.
saying
Yes.
Unforgiven, Untouchables, who knows?
I would love that. I would love the potential of Obi-Wan maybe going off planet and finding an adventure there that doesn't necessarily have ramifications on the major galactic stage, but maybe it's a more personal adventure, or maybe even something pulls him into the Death Star. So, you know, he sure knew it wasn't a small moon. And Darth Vader does say you should not have come back. Now, what is he talking about? Is he talking in broad terms? You should not have come back and made yourself noticeable on the entire galactic stage, or you should not have come back to this Death Star here. And keep in mind, Obi-Wan knew his way around the Death Star pretty well, too. He just needed that quick look. R2, pull up that map there on that screen. He just briefly glanced at it. He's like, oh, yeah, I know where I'm going. Been there before.
Obi-Wan Kenobi friend Jar Jar Binks, by way of Ahmed Best, took to Twitter to congratulate Ewan McGregor as the news broke that he would be returning as Obi-Wan Kenobi. As well he should.
Yes.
Congrats, my brother, says Ahmed Best.
No, that's not what he said.
Oh, what did he say?
He said, Mr. Congratulating Mr. Brother Obi-Wan Kenobi. Whatever.
Obi! I think that's what he called it.
He is. I think Jar Jar is the first to refer to Obi-Wan Kenobi as just Obi.
Yeah.
And then we heard Satine do it in the Clone Wars. But Jar Jar is really the one who planted the flag and just Obi. Oh, well, I shouldn't correct him. It's like when people call my son Mike and not Michael. He always wants to correct them.
Oh, I'll just bite my tongue on this. He's calling me Obi. Again.
Your source for the Force.
Well, we've got more about that, I'm sure, that we'll be talking about as this weekend unfolds, D23. Another thing that's going to be a big topic at D23 that's confirmed is The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is set to have a big presence during the Disney Plus panel at D23. Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni will be on hand for that panel. I suspect we'll finally get official, good quality trailer and behind-the-scenes clips, probably maybe slightly more polished versions than what we had unveiled for us at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago.
So, recap what we saw in that panel. We saw a trailer. We saw behind-the-scenes footage. And we actually saw fully fleshed out, fully produced, edited scenes.
Yep.
So how are they going to top that act at D23? We've seen so much already. Will we see the same trailer and then it will be released on a broader scale? Was any of that material we saw at Star Wars Celebration?
None of it has been officially released.
Okay.
The best you can see is little iPhone handheld captures.
All right. Well, I predict we will see a new trailer, a freshly cut trailer that will incorporate elements of material we've already seen in Chicago, along with some new stuff we've never seen before. I know they are not going to go to D23 and show the exact same footage they showed in Chicago. This is too big a stage for Disney. This is their everything, man. It's like in my neighborhood, this is the block party, you know? This is the big deal. You make or break your whole year on how you present yourself at my block party in my neighborhood. So that's what's happening with D23. I think they're going to bring some really fresh new stuff. And, of course, we are how many months closer now? 4.5 months of production has been going on for these episodes of The Mandalorian since Star Wars Celebration Chicago, so they'll have some new stuff to show. We're going to get some fresh stuff, and maybe they'll also release some of the stuff we saw at Celebration, but that won't be their showcase material. They're going to bring some new, fresh stuff. They have a big act to follow because the stuff they showed at Celebration I thought was extremely generous. So many months away from the series actually debuting. They showed us a lot at Star Wars Celebration.
Oh, they showed a ton. And the Hollywood Reporter has a pretty long interview with Jon Favreau right on the eve of all of this. And I thought it was interesting. One of the questions they ask him is, he says, Bob Iger says Disney Plus is the future of the company, so there is some pressure on this anchor show, referring to The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is carrying a lot of the load for how this Disney Plus platform is going to launch. And Favreau says that's why he's good at what he does. But this feels to me like when we made Iron Man. It didn't feel like the future of Marvel was resting on it, even though the future of Marvel was resting on it. Because if we failed, they would have lost their characters that were their collateral. So, you know, he understands that The Mandalorian really is the thing that could make or break Disney Plus. It certainly will have a large role. A lot of this interview features details on the technology and how they're using, you know, digital sets and things like that. In fact, he answers the question about, well, you know, people are going to hear digital production on The Mandalorian and think, great, we saw digital production in the Star Wars prequels and it didn't look very good. How is this different? And Favreau says, well, I would argue that the prequels are, and Lucas in general is the bedrock that all of this is built on. He is the first person that had digital photography. He was the first person to do completely CG characters. The whole notion of not having even a print version of a film, of having everything be zeros and ones, that was all George. Not to mention Edit Droid, which turned into Avid, Pixar, which spawned out of their laboratories at Lucasfilm. So he is arguably the center of the Big Bang for everything that I'm doing. It's building on the shoulders of what he was able to innovate. And I pull that quote because it's no coincidence to me that a guy like Jon Favreau is going to hook up with a guy like Dave Filoni, who learned literally at the knee and the feet of George Lucas, the maker of all of this. So to me, that Lucas spirit is so rampant through this series. And Jim, it was there in full display in the footage that we saw. I think that in some ways, The Mandalorian is going to be the fulfillment of the promise of new Star Wars that began right at the Disney acquisition. For a lot of fans, this is going to be the thing that they've been waiting for.
Totally agree, based on the footage we saw at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And with the confidence I have in the creative duo of Favreau-Filoni. I love it. Been listening to some conversations we've had with Dave Filoni over the years, most specifically during Season 2 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which featured the debut of the Mandalorians in that animated series. And you can check it out on YouTube at our RFR YouTube channel under the Filoni Files playlist. There are a few nice, very solid segments of Dave Filoni talking about George Lucas and the development of the Mandalorians and their culture based on Filoni's conversations with GL. So I find that stuff to be really fascinating as we're ramping up toward the debut of The Mandalorian, because Dave Filoni's research goes back well beyond just the last few years. It goes back about a decade. And he talks to us about a lot of George Lucas's vision of what the Mandalorians were all about, from Boba Fett onward. So yeah, check that stuff out on our YouTube channel. And I'm discovering new quotes every day. I'm going through a lot of old material, so it's very relevant to what's happening in Star Wars today.
And if you're interested in what a guy like Jon Favreau thinks about all of the streaming services, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and what his take on it is and how it relates to independent films, which is where he cut his teeth, and what he thinks of Elon Musk. I mean, they cover everything. It's a really great interview. Hollywood Reporter with Jon Favreau, and he's got lots to say about Mandalorian and a whole lot more. But he's a really down-to-earth guy, and I think he's really one to listen to when it comes to this kind of thing. Shifting gears here a little bit, let's talk about Episode 9, something that I wasn't expecting to hear much about at this point, but we're starting to get some details, is the John Williams score. Mm-hmm. Maybe the final John Williams score for a Star Wars film, maybe this final John Williams score for any film, for that matter. The maestro doesn't seem to have any plans for retirement. We know he's slowing down a little bit in terms of his travel, a little more difficult for the old man to get around, but it's not slowing him down in terms of Star Wars scoring. His brother, Don Williams, was recently at the Academy of Scoring Arts, and he said that his brother John has written a whopping 135 minutes of music for the latest Star Wars movie, which, if you do the algorithm right, could push The Last Jedi past the 150-minute runtime mark. 150 minutes. That would put it as the longest Star Wars film ever. At 150 minutes.
Yes, but of course, the full score is rarely incorporated into the entire film. You have stuff that gets left behind because of the way the film gets edited. This is truth for every Star Wars film that has ever existed. Well, I shouldn't say every movie, but when you're dealing with John Williams, you take whatever he can put out there.
Right. I don't think they're... Yeah, John, can we get... I don't really like... I'm not liking this.
But the film goes through the editorial process, and certain scenes end up on the cutting room floor, and other beats get removed, and things get tightened up considerably. And in that case, oftentimes the entire score is not incorporated into the film itself. You can notice these discrepancies over the years in Star Wars films and the soundtracks that get released to accompany them. There is occasional music you'll hear on those soundtracks that didn't end up in the final film. So that's just, the nature of the editorial process.
Right. Well, they're just using a calculus based on how other film scores stack up to the final length of the film, and based on those stats, they're saying that Last Jedi could be as long as 150 minutes. I don't think it's going to be that long, but you never know. The more interesting thing that Don Williams said, how would you like to be Don Williams, brother of John Williams? You're going around and you're accepting awards and speaking on his behalf, and you're just like one letter away from being the same guy.
When they were kids.
One letter away.
When they were kids, it was Johnny and Donnie, the crazy orchestra boys.
Yeah. He did say, he says, I can tell you that every theme that you've ever heard is going to be compiled into this last effort. Yoda, Leia, Phantom, Darth, all of it is going to be in there. And in his usual style, he hides them. So you got to go looking for them. So this is going to be, we think about this is the end of the Skywalker saga. So much of the Skywalker saga is told through music. So this is the end of some of those great familiar themes.
Well, I don't know if it's the end, but it's going to be the end probably of John Williams contributing fresh material to Star Wars. I think the themes that Williams has composed are going to probably outlive Star Wars themselves. If the franchise shuts down, the music will be still played in football stadiums across the USA. So that's always a thrill at any college sporting event, or pro for that matter. So the artistry will outlive the man, and it will continue to be incorporated into Star Wars in some way. Always. And
the Force theme, and I mean we've seen that stuff kind of show up in non-Skywalker canon, I guess you might say. Or non-Skywalker stories.
Non-Skywalker stories. Those are 3 words we're going to be latching onto as a phrase going into the future. And that's a scary place for me right now, I'll be honest with you. But hey,
yeah, no, I'm with you.
You know, we'll see
I'm
how
100% with you. I mean, we've got some quotes coming up from former / future Star Wars director Rian Johnson as he talks about a Star Wars and the essence of Star Wars and getting beyond the original characters. But before we do that, I do want to throw this out. This was kind of interesting, is that there's a book coming out, may already be out. I don't think so. But it's called Star Wars: The Secrets of the Jedi. Now, this is one of those kind of textbook style things. We've seen them. What was the other ones? The Sith Journal, or what the hell was it called?
There was a Way of the Sith and the Jedi journals or whatever it is. No, that's those guys.
I don't know what it's called, but I mean,
the
Rian
Way
Johnson,
of the Jedi or something.
Yeah, well, I've got it over here. Hold on. Let me
you have it there, don't you? It's your favorite book. You sit down and you read it all the time.
The
you
Jedi Path.
Sitting in the lotus position.
I wasn't going to let this get away. The Jedi Path.
Yes, the Jedi Path. That's the book.
Yes.
Daniel Wallace.
Daniel Wallace.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I've got my signed copy right here. Daniel Wallace. And the Jedi Path and the Sith, whatever the Sith one was, it was the Jedi Path and the I don't know, the Sith Road, whatever. But it was written as almost like a textbook where, in the case of the Jedi Path, it was like a textbook for Jedi, but it had notes kind of scribbled in from various famous Jedi, from Qui-Gon Jinn to Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka is in there. So a lot of people... Qui-Gon Jinn, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure you know.
Yeah, right. Anyway, so this is kind of like in that vein. Star Wars: The Secrets of the Jedi. It recounts the entire history of the Jedi Order from Luke Skywalker's perspective. And a preview was released. And I'm bringing this up because I think that it has potential repercussions, what we might see in The Rise of Skywalker. You might be saying, well, how is that possible? Well, Rian Johnson actually cited The Jedi Path by Daniel Wallace as being the source for where he got the idea of forcebacks and also being able to force projection yourself in another place from someplace else, which we saw Luke do at the end. In fact, he famously tweeted a response when people were saying, how could you do this? We've never seen this before. And I think it was like a series of photos of him going to a shelf and pulling the book off the shelf and then opening up the book and pointing to the page. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think the caption said, "Suck on this, man babies."
Yeah. For those of you that have been wondering what Luke Skywalker, or who I should say, Luke Skywalker had been communing with, talking with, after the events of Return of the Jedi, it is sort of addressed here in this book. Again, this is Luke Skywalker's perspective, talking about the history of the Jedi Order. And here's a quote from Luke Skywalker. This says, talking about Force ghosts, Force spirits after death. He says, that knowledge was passed down to a select few, including Obi-Wan, Yoda, and my father. He writes, their spirits guided me for many years, but vanished when I shut myself off from the Force. It's a relief to feel their presence after all this time. Now, the perspective of the book, you would, as they say in this article, says that it would seem that it was Luke writing it down during The Last Jedi as he reopened himself to the Force. But what I thought was really interesting here is he talks about his father. His father was one who he was able to communicate with after he passed away think about all the things that Vader / Anakin knows. What an amazing source of information he must have been for the rebellion as they were in the process of cleaning up and wiping up the remnants of Palpatine's army. Vader would have known all of it.
But sadly, the conversations went something like this.
I hate sand.
It gets everywhere.
You totally know.
I know! It's everywhere! It's so itchy!
It's everywhere. It's all over Tashi Station. When I go to pick up power converters, it gets everywhere.
It does. It really does. It gets everywhere.
November. Comes out in November. Oh, so yeah, it's part of the lead-in to the Rise of Skywalker. November 19th. Hey, we promised at the top of the show we were going to go into the cantina this week, and into the cantina we go. So after all this conversation, I don't know about you, I could use a drink, so let's pull up some stools.
Hey, let's do it.
And let's go in the cantina with Star Wars artist Otis Frampton.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master? For a drink.
Sorry about the mess. You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hello.
Hey. Otis, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's our pleasure. We should probably give you a sense of kind of how you came to the attention of us here at Rebel Force Radio and the Rebel Force Radio listening audience. We actually had a voicemail that was left for us by a fella out in Phoenix. He's a regular listener and a regular voicemail leaver. Eric from Phoenix, we call him. Let's go back and listen.
I've always thought the Tusken Raiders, a.k.a. Sand People, and the Jawas were really cool. And, you know, there's really not been a whole lot written about them, like in detail. Like, what do they look like without their cloaks on, with all the wrappings on if you're a Tusken Raider? And I do know there was a Sand Person featured, and it could have been in the Star Wars Insider comic book series, in a comic series, or maybe it was in a book or a comic book. I do remember something about that. But anyway, I always thought it'd be cool to dive deeper into the background of these species, or what do they look like? What's their story? How did they get on Tatooine? You know, all of that.
So we were having a discussion about Sand People, Tusken Raiders, and what we really thought their culture might be like. Because, you know, Anakin Skywalker said that they were animals, and Obi-Wan didn't seem to really have a whole lot of love for him either. And so, you know, Eric left that voicemail, and what we found is that while there wasn't really a comic about Tuskens, there was one, or a proposed comic, in your case, about Jawas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I heard the show, by the way, so that was really cool. I really appreciate it. I heard the episode. So, I mean, would you like me to kind of go back and talk about how I started doing this whole Jawa thing and how I kind of became the Jawa guy? Is that?
Yeah. How did you become the Jawa guy? What was it about Jawas?
Yeah. It's one of those things. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Inktober. It's this annual month-long drawing thing created by an artist named Jake Parker, who also does some great Star Wars fan art. And the idea is every day you draw something in ink. And this was like 3 years ago, I think. And I started drawing during that Inktober. I started drawing Jawas, and I really enjoyed it. And people seemed to like it. And every time I post a Jawa on like Instagram or Twitter, my likes and my views and my follows would just shoot up. And it's one of those things where I found that I loved drawing them. People loved me drawing them, so I kind of leaned into it. And I thought, well, this will last, for a little bit, and then I'll move on to something else, fan art wise. But I kept finding out that no matter what situation I put these critters in, it worked. Comedy, drama, romance,
romance.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. I think there's one of my covers shows a Jawa romancing sliced noodles. So I mean, it just always worked.
Jawa
One of your,
love.
I don't remember who it was on the show where that call was came in, but one of you described it or compared it to Minions, and I've made that comparison myself.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where they're like little avatars, you know. They're just sort of, you can put anything onto them and it works. And so I just kept drawing Jawas, and I started pumping out tons of drawings. And at a certain point, I really wanted to sort of, try to use this to get some work. So I started creating these fake covers for a fake comic series called JAWA Adventures, and I just kept going. And now there's almost 100 of them, I think, on my website.
Wow. And it's all covers.
Yeah, for purposes of the pitch, it's all covers. There's a few pages, and at a certain point, I think it was early in 2018 or late 2017, I forget. One of the editors at IDW found it. Somebody showed it to him, and then the editor of Star Wars Adventures was told about it, and I got an email asking if I wanted to do a backup story. So it worked. I kind of lucked into it, and it worked. And I got one job so far, drawing official Jawas for a backup story in Star Wars Adventures 8. And after that, I was like, well, I'm just going to keep doing this just in case, So I'm still doing it. I still have. I'm in the middle of deadlines for other things now, but every once in a while, I'll go back and keep going. I've got 2 or 3 more fake Jawa adventure covers in the pipeline. So it's just it's something I do for fun mainly, but people seem to like it. So
I love it.
I'll keep doing it.
What I love about it is that you are unrestricted in the way that you depict the Jawa, especially in relation to the Star Wars galaxy at large, because you put Jawas in any sort of situation. You have Jedi Jawa, you have X-Wing pilot Jawa. And I find it all to be very feasible. I find it all to be quite possible. I'm on board with it. It's a Jawa fishing into the pit of Carcoon and the Sarlacc, just sitting there fishing, just minding his own business. And then he takes up the lightsaber and saves the galaxy.
Yeah, the Jedi Jawa, I would love to do something with that officially. It's my favorite character so far, definitely. I'm actually doing I'm creating some animation with the Jedi Jawa right now.
Some animation. Now, Of course, we talked about some of your work in the animated field with the How It Should Have Ended series.
Yeah, I was one of the artists on the show. I haven't done anything for him in a while, but for about 7 years, I was one of the artists, character and background artists, and I think I worked on about 90 or 95 episodes. It was fun. It's a good show.
Oh, it looks great, too. It looks really great. As a matter of fact, I just recently watched the Rogue One, how Star Wars Rogue One should have ended. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Jason, what they do is they just take little bits of the film and sort of retell the story, and it's very funny. And then they fast forward to other parts of the film. And the way Rogue One should have ended, according to the show, is Jin and Cassian are ready to embrace as the tidal wave of destruction heads in their direction. And
a Jawa shows up?
No. I was hoping. But all of a sudden, K2SO shows up. And he reveals that when he was taking all that information from the other Imperial droid, once they had reached the Imperial outpost on Scarif.
Oh, yeah.
He had also downloaded his own databank into that Imperial droid. So once he was killed off, he was able to resurrect himself as an identical Imperial droid. So he flies in and he saves Jin and Cassian, and it's happy ending for everyone.
Yeah.
Because you have the Chirrut. Yes, you have Chirrut, who I was spacing his name for a second. You have Chirrut, who becomes a Jedi, and you have Baze, who just gets to continue killing things, so he loves that. And it's just a happy ending. But I got to say, and so I recommend to everyone, and you did extensive work on these episodes, right, Otis? You did the backgrounds, right?
Yeah, I did all the backgrounds for that episode for Rogue One. That was a lot of fun.
Amazing. It looks great.
Thanks.
It looks really great. Actually, we have a little clip here. Can we just take a second to play it? Because I want to impress on our audience how much fun this show is. Now, we've talked about this before on Rebel Force Radio. Why did the Imperials, led by Krennic, park so far away from the Urso homestead at the beginning of the movie when they landed? And so they have a little debate about it on how Star Wars Rogue One should have ended.
We've arrived at Urso Farm.
Excellent work, pilot. Now circle around a couple of times and then land extremely far away.
Far away, sir?
Yes, land like 400 yards away and we'll all walk together in a straight line. It will look amazing.
Wouldn't that, like, give them plenty of time to run away or something? Or hide?
No, it will be intimidating and everyone is going to love it. What did you say? Nobody can understand you guys, for real. You don't have to scramble your words all of the time.
I said I don't really want to walk 400 yards. Yeah, me either.
Okay, fine, we'll land right at that doorstep. Jeez, why don't you take the epicness out of everything?
The epicness. Oh,
so that's awesome. So you can catch that stuff on YouTube, how things should have ended. But you said now you're expanding into other animation and you're bringing the Jawas along with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's just for fun, for my own sort of play. I don't. I'm not really an animator. I don't. But I'm giving it a try because I really want to see my Jedi Jawa in action. So I'm working on something right now.
Good. So that's going to be the character featured in the first.
In the first one, yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's just a test, but and it's just for fun. Like all this, it really is. Ultimately, I do it because I enjoy it. But I would love to do more with that Jedi Jawa character for sure, be it comics or animation or whatever. It's just, that guy's fun.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and I think there's definitely room in the Star Wars universe for a Jawa Jedi. Hey, Otis, your original generation, original trilogy, original generation, right?
Yes, I am. I saw Star Wars in the first re-release in '78 when I was 5.5.
Oh, in '78. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see it when it first came out, but the first re-release in '78 is when my dad took me to see it.
Right, and it came out every year. So what did you think? Do you recall being Kid Otis in the theater and seeing the Jawa? Did you recall any sort of reactions that you might be able to bring back and share with us?
Well, yeah, actually, it's weird because my memory of seeing Star Wars for the first time is actually kind of tied to Jawas in a way. It's the moment where the R2's in the canyon and the Jawas pop up and shoot him, and when R2 falls over. I remember everyone in the theater laughing, and I felt terrible for him. I was devastated for R2. That's my first memory of Star Wars. I mean, from the movie itself. My very first memory of Star Wars is seeing a poster of Darth Vader in my friend's room and just being like, "What is that? That looks awesome." So, but yeah, my first memory of the movie is tied to Jawas. So I guess it's fate that I'm stuck drawing these guys.
And we've heard from a lot of people that went on to work in the creative fields. Do you credit being a Star Wars fan and being so influenced from an early age by
absolutely.
George's universe to become
changed my life?
Yeah, and
changed my life. I was the kid, growing up who would draw X-wings and TIE fighter battles on the the paper bag covers to his school books, and then the other kids would see it and be like, "Can you do that in my book?" So that was my childhood, was drawing Star Wars stuff for people,
And then someday you thought, well, maybe I can do that for a living. And you've done that.
Someday.
Become a professional comic book artist. Well, maybe not Star Wars, but certainly you've got a list of credits, and you're a professional artist. So there's a success to be found there for sure.
Well, aside from, my first professional credits kind of came at the same time. It was my own comic series and, my first, pro gig was doing Star Wars sketch cards for Topps for Revenge of the Sith.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, the Tops, the sketch cards for Tops has certainly been an entree for a lot of artists to gain some recognition, certainly let them play in the Star Wars sandbox. It's really been a really great program that they've had.
Oh, yeah. My entire like commission, my life as an artist doing commissions, it's the result of doing sketch cards. That whole world opened up an entire new sort of income stream for me, and if it hadn't been for the sketch card work I did, I drew thousands of sketch cards when I was doing it professionally, but it changed my life. It forced me to draw constantly too, because when you're doing these sketch card sets, you're at least in the early days, you were doing 500 to 1,000 cards per set.
Oh wow!
So it was
a lot of work.
Yeah, well, you end up doing a lot of really sketchy cards, but some of them you put a lot of effort into it.
Sketchy sketch cards.
Yeah.
What else have you done?
Well, my main thing, artist wise, is I'm a comic book creator. I have my own series at Image Comics called Oddly Normal. It's an all ages series, kind of like Wizard of Oz meets Harry Potter meets Monsters Inc. And I've been working on that at Image since 2014. Working on the 3rd volume right now. Other than that, I did How It Should Have Ended for 6-7 years, and I illustrate children's books, and mainly comic children's books, that kind of thing. I'm working on one right now for a publisher. It's a comic book bio of Walt Disney, so that's
very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Are you also a Disney aficionado or a fan of Disney characters and?
In general, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm big enough fan that I read the Neil Gabler Disney bio, so I had that going for me when they asked me to do the book. I'm like, well, I'm kind of I kind of know the story already. So, but yeah, so I like Disney. I was one of those people who was very happy when the news broke that Disney was buying Star Wars, because I'm like, well, it's in good hands now. So
right. Well, and how has that turned out as far as you're concerned as a Star Wars fan?
You mean how do I view the current slate of Star Wars movies?
Well, just in general, do you have a take on, for someone whose original trilogy, original generation, which I think Jim will, if Jim has granted me access into the original generation, because I saw. Rumors have it that I was in a theater for Empire Strikes Back. I don't really believe it because I have no memory of it. Yet
really?
I remember Superman 3 in the theater. Yeah, sadly. I
saw that last week and I don't even remember it.
But anyway, I just remembered it was the same guy from The Toy. That was what, as a kid of the 80s, that's what
Richard Pryor was.
That's your favorite reference.
That's what he was to me. I'm like, oh, that's the guy from The Toy. But anyway, I've been granted access because I did see Return of the Jedi on its original release. So if you saw Star Wars on its re-release in '78, you're certainly a member of the club. But so you've been around for the long haul. You've seen it. You've lived through the original trilogy. You've lived through the prequels, the dark times before the prequels, Star Wars animation with the Clone Wars, and here we are in the Disney era. You're an artist, so you look at things in a unique way, as only artists can, and also a Star Wars fan. So I'd love to know what's your hot take on the last 5 years.
Well, when it comes to Star Wars, actually, I view it more through the lens of a writer, because that's. I kind of view myself as a writer who draws. I was really inspired by Lucas as a writer. I remember reading the Lucas's bio that came out. I think his name was Dale Pollock. He wrote it, and I wanted to be a writer as long as I wanted to be an artist. So when I think of Star Wars, I really think of it from the writing perspective, and. That said, the original trilogy is amazing. I enjoyed the prequels for the most part. I'm one of those weirdos who Episode 1 is my favorite prequel. Still is.
Weird. That's not true. That isn't. Say it loud and say it proud. I agree with you there on that one, Otis.
It will always 99. The summer of '99 was a special year, a special time for me, and it still feels. I have nostalgia for it. I like it. Flash forward then to Episode 7. I kind of fell off the Star Wars wagon after Episode 3. Again, I'm a weirdo. I didn't like Episode 3. I was kind of disillusioned by Star Wars in general after that. So when Force Awakens came around, I was cautiously optimistic. And I remember the lights coming up after the movie and just turning to my girlfriend, my now wife, and she said, "What did you think?" Because she was still a big fan, and I was like, "I think I loved it." Force Awakens for a while there was my favorite Star Wars movie. I absolutely just loved it, and it was like
I want to jump on into something real quick, Otis, because this is something we've never really discussed on the show, and I relate so much to the way you reacted to The Force Awakens, and I think that it has a lot to do with the experience of going through the prequels. So we're sadder but wiser, you might say, in some ways after the prequels, in a way, and then Ep7 comes. We've got some of that baggage, maybe. Credits roll, lights come up, and you go, I think I really loved this.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt the same way, where I think I loved it because I was thinking back to, how I felt after each subsequent prequel film. So I think there's a lot of people listening right now that probably experienced the same feeling.
Yeah, it was a weird feeling because, I mean, for so many years of sort of not really thinking about Star Wars other than like drawing fan art, that kind of thing, which I still did. But I mean, in terms of thinking of it as, well, I got to watch these movies, that wasn't happening for me. I'd go back and watch, Star Wars and Empire every once in a while. But it just wasn't, it was sort of not off my radar. Force Awakens, I loved it. I don't know what else to say about it. I love the characters. That was the thing that I got from the movie the most. As a writer, I'm a story and character guy. That's what I latch on to. It's everything else is sort of icing on the cake. It's great, but story and character for me is everything. And Rey, Kylo Ren, Poe, I loved these characters, and I could not wait to learn more about them. That was my thought at the end of the movie. I can't wait to find out more about these characters because I just fell in love,
No Jawas in The Force Awakens.
No Jawas. No, unfortunately, we're gonna have to wait till the Mandalorian apparently to get some Jawas back in the series.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
There is one little guy on Jakku who interrupts Rey while she's cleaning her scrap metal, and I always refer to him as the metal face Jawa. I think I'm the only one who does.
Relative. That. Yeah.
I thought he was a Jawa who was off planet, and he had to wear that metal mask because if he didn't, he would shrivel up or something. Because the planet Jakku has a different atmosphere or moisture or something like that.
Well, that's one thing I'd love to explore if I ever get to do JAWA Adventures. Is there's got to be Jawas on other planets, and they've got to be different kinds of things. I think one of the covers I did was Jawas on a snow planet, and so it's like, well, they're probably collecting droids and stuff everywhere, or maybe on some planets they're not droid collectors. They collect like creatures and sell them in giant zoo crawlers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true, because you'd have to consider they would be probably a spacefaring species, the way they collect all of their mechanical equipment, and they could probably piece together a Star Destroyer and take off from Tatooine and go see the rest of the galaxy. Hey, Otis, have you ever thought of illustrating a Jawa with his cloak with the hood down?
No, absolutely not. That's a no-no to me. You don't do that. You don't take away the mystery. Once you take that hood off, the mystery's gone.
Yeah,
haven't you ever wondered? Just come on, haven't you ever wondered what they look like under there?
No.
There's Otis has his own private drawings that he only shows to his wife of a de-hooded Jawa. Well, yeah, there's maybe other things there, but when I see your Jawa covers and your take on the Jawa, I think a little bit of I said Minions, and I also think a little bit of Marvin the Martian from Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Kind of a similar. Yeah, you wouldn't want to see him without his hood either.
No, you don't want to take that mystery because that's part of the fun of the character. Is that blank slate and those big eyes that are expressive in various ways. It wouldn't work to me if you took the hood off. In the same way, I don't want to see what's under the Sandcrawler or the Tusken Raiders bandages. I want that to be a mystery too. I like mystery. don't
Dark
take it away.
Dark Horse Comics did go into that territory when they had the license.
Did they show them with their
yes.
bandages on? Really? I've never seen that. I want to see it.
As a matter of fact, one of them debanded. Now they had a series of really intricate tattoos on their face, and it was a human. And the human actually became strong in the Force and became a Jedi.
Wait, are you talking about a Jawa or a Tusken Raider here?
I'm talking about Tusken Raider.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Jawa.
I switched over to Tuskens.
No. Otis has the market cornered on Jedi Jawa.
Okay, all right. So we're talking about the Tuskens.
Tuskens.
Right. Well,
because Otis said he wouldn't want to see what's underneath there. And I'm just saying that Dark Horse did reveal that with the character Asherad Het.
Yeah.
And his son, Sharad Het.
The other thing that I was thinking, Otis, is I was looking at these covers and trying to kind of get a sense of what it might be if you had, if you could wave your hand, not a magic wand, you could wave your hand in the Force and give yourself maybe an animated series in the Star Wars universe with these Jawas. Is it kind of a tag and bink kind of thing? Would these Jawas just always be sort of on the other side of the camera of events that we've seen in the Star Wars saga, or would you want to have them doing something completely new? Because I love the way your covers plop them into some of these familiar situations.
Well, it would be a variety of things. It'd be that I'd like to show the Jawa point of view of certain things we've already seen in the Star Wars movies, and then I do original stories that sort of expand on their own mythology. One thing I want to say, I don't know if you guys saw all of them, to be honest. If you go to my pitch page and you scroll down to the bottom, there's a little see more button. I'm not sure if you guys saw all of them, to be honest.
I don't think I clicked it. I don't think I clicked the show more.
You have like 100.
Oh, okay. Now, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Now there's a lot more.
Yeah, there's mashups with Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Oh,
the little weird droid from the black hole is in one of them.
There he is with young Lando. The one that I did
an action figure one too. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, an action figure one. Where's
it's next to the Lando one.
Look at that, yeah, with the card and the oh, that'd be great.
I built the Jawa in 3D in ZBrush. That's a real 3D model.
Oh, really?
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do.
And you're really, really going into uncharted territory here with number 59, where you have this old Jawa with a big gray beard that would make ZZ Top blush.
Yeah.
Things you don't normally expect to see.
Well, I had to show a way of showing an old Jawa, so I had to have tons of patches on his outfit, and I thought, it'd be fun to have a big beard growing out of that hood. It makes you wonder what else is under there, but I'll never show it.
Now, there's one that really jumped out at me, especially in light of recent events. I'm sure you've heard that we're likely days away, as this podcast goes live, of getting official confirmation of the green light of a live-action television series, maybe a limited mini-series of the adventures of Obi-Wan Kenobi after he's marooned there on Tatooine. And you have a cover where you got a Ewan McGregor-style Obi-Wan getting directions, which I like, from one of the Jawas.
Yeah, that version of Obi-Wan is it's based on this 3D statue that this amazing 3D artist created a number of years back.
I'm sorry.
Hey, how you doing?
Was that a Jawa?
That was a Jawa. Are you a Jawa?
Hello, Daddy viewers. Subscribe to Rebel Force Radio.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. That was
that's very Jawa.
Yeah.
Very Jawa-esque. We got ourselves a Jawa here just for you, Otis. We knew you were coming, so we booked a Jawa.
I told the kids, I said, because we're recording the show earlier these days, I said, you can come down and tell me goodnight, and it doesn't matter. So, all right,
that's my demographic. The kids always sort of flock to me, so that's cool.
All right, well, they must have known you were on the air. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's all right. What I was saying was that the version of Obi-Wan on that cover is based on this sculpture that this amazing 3D artist created that was sort of, he wanted to show what Obi-Wan might look like as a wanderer on Tatooine. You know, he's got the big backpack on. He's got the Tusken Raider rifle that he poached from somebody. He's got a piece of his armor from the Clone Wars. It's an amazing statue. I wish I had a link to it handy, but he actually did 2 different versions. He did a version with Ewan, and he did a version of a younger Alec Guinness, and it was amazing. And so that's what I based that on. So I thought, well, it'd be fun to show him, getting directions somewhere from a Jawa. So why not?
How can you not do the live action Obi-Wan series?
I can't wait.
And not have some Jawa in there, some Jawa action.
Yeah,
that's the TV show that, or the whatever version whatever form it takes. The Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan between the trilogies is the story I've been waiting for. I can't wait. It's gonna be great. I saw something that said that apparently Ewan's gonna be directing a couple episodes too.
Yeah. That's a rumor.
Yeah.
That's a rumor. What do you think? Any speculation? Are we going to see some leftover material from the Solo film with Darth Maul and the Crimson Dawn and all that kind of infiltrating Obi-Wan's solitude? There's all kind of great stuff you can do. Do you think there's room for an adventure, an off-planet adventure, while Obi-Wan is out in exile? That's something that takes him off planet. That it may not necessarily be for the cause of freedom of the galaxy. It can be just a very small story where he's trying to help some people, and that pulls him off planet. And then somehow
I can see that happening because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, my extra thing I always like to throw in there is somehow Obi-Wan ends up on the Death Star. Because I always thought of that line from Vader when he confronts Obi-Wan in A New Hope and says, "You should not have come back." Most people look at it and say, well, he's addressing Obi-Wan's return to the galactic scene in general, on the big stage. But I think he's being very specific. You should not have come back to the Death Star.
I would. I'd say it's more of a general thing because he seemed really surprised when he declared that it was a space station. It didn't seem like a familiarity to me. But I mean, I can see him going. I can see him going off world. Look, if there's one thing Obi-Wan's good at, it's sneaking around. He's like the expert sneaking around guy. If you watch him in episode 2 and episode 4, that's what he does a lot of the time. So I can see him going off planet and sneaking around doing stuff.
Yeah. He has that little trick where he snaps, and it sounds like it's coming from the other side of the room. It's the ventriloquist snap. And he does that. He does that to the stormtroopers, the TKs over by the tractor beam on the Death Star.
Who was really good at that? Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Remember how he used to always throw his voice? I used to try to do that. Like, how does he throw? Who knows how to throw their voice?
Well, I think Shaggy was a Jedi. I mean, it's obvious.
He probably thought he was.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you, well, I never mind.
Eating up Scooby snacks.
Yeah, a few quote unquote Scooby snacks. So we've kind of skipped over a couple of parts as we kind of go through your history as a Star Wars fan, and as an artist, I'm curious. Did you go back? It sounds like you kind of skipped the Clone Wars era and the era of Rebels. Did you go back and revisit some of that animated work once you got back into Star Wars after The Force Awakens, or were you peripherally looking at it when it was going on?
And to add on to that, I want to know why you were turned off by Revenge of the Sith specifically.
Well, to answer the first part, I watched Clone Wars a little bit at first, and then I kind of dropped out. And then, yes, I did go back and I finished the series after Force Awakens. I still haven't finished Rebels. To be honest, it partly is because I've just been busy. And I don't watch a lot of new TV these days. It's just the way it is. I found that once you get into the business, you have little time to actually consume the stuff that used to inspire you. Yeah. Just one of those things. What else did you ask? I'm sorry.
Why did you hate Revenge of the Sith so much?
Well,
what turned you off?
I thought it was damaging to the original trilogy story wise. The contradictions that it created with Padme and her death, and from the Jedi, the fact that Obi-Wan and Yoda just sort of gave up. It didn't make any sense to me. I thought it damaged their characters in the original trilogy. The fact that Obi-Wan just sort of dropped Luke off with no explanation and then just went away. Didn't make any sense to me. I thought the story of Episode 3 was just really damaging, and it turned me off.
It's an interesting perspective to hear because most people consider that to be the superior of all the prequels.
They're entitled to that opinion.
It's interesting to hear you articulate that. And I have to say, something I've always wondered is why didn't Obi-Wan and Yoda face the Emperor together? Why did they have to split up?
They didn't have to. That's another thing that bothers me. Also, why didn't they just go off and raise Luke and Leia as Jedi? There was no explanation given for really separating them.
My two
Luke,
Jedi dads.
Yeah, sure. Why not go off and hide up in secret? Instead, they give one to one of the most prominent senators in the galaxy, and they give the other to people who keep his last name. Don't get me started. Drives me nuts.
Well, here's the thing: you hide things sometimes right under their noses. It's the last place they'll look.
And then some. But other times you hide them better.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Here's my opinion about the whole thing. Lucas was creating the original trilogy movie by movie. He had sort of an idea, but I mean the movies were written individually, progressively, and then when he had to go back, I don't think he cared so much to make everything connect completely logically. I think he said, I just need to make it connect. I just need to make everybody get into the places that they need to be at the end of this episode to match Episode 4 without really thinking about it and saying, well, this needs to make sense logically. He just said, we'll just finish it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Otis. I think that George is the ultimate rebel in a lot of ways. And I think he also, in the same way, he didn't want to be beholden to the expanded universe as he was thinking about writing further adventures of Luke, Leia, Han, prior to the sale of Disney. The same way that he was didn't want to be beholden to comic book artists and writers and novelists as he was thinking about the prequels. I don't think he wanted to be beholden to himself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
which is that's just George.
I'll go even further. I don't think he felt like he needed to even have things make sense movie to movie in the prequels, because there's stuff that's just like, why didn't you follow up on this? I think he was just like, I'm going to tell the story that I want to tell, and I'm not really going to be concerned about if it matches completely.
Yeah, and I think it gives us. I mean, we can complain about it, but we can also have a lot of fun discussing it, retconning it, and it's still an incredibly compelling story. And we're here it is. How many years later we're still talking about it? I would ask you if you don't mind. Let's just keep kind of going. And here we are. We're in the aftermath of The Last Jedi. We're in the aftermath of Solo, and looking forward to the Rise of Skywalker. So where are you in terms of your fandom and how you're feeling about the present and the near future here?
I'm back to cautiously optimistic as far as Episode 9 is concerned. I was very happy to hear that JJ was coming back. I'm like, oh, no. I was just very happy. Let's put it that way. These days, when it comes to Star Wars, my wife and I have a tradition. We watch Star Wars movies on New Year's Eve. And for the last, for the last couple of years, we've really only watched the original trilogy. But this last year, we did something new, which is the way that I kind of think of Star Wars now. We watched what I call the Solo story. We watch Solo, episodes 4, 5, and 6, and The Force Awakens. And that's our Star Wars now.
You did that all in one night?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
The Solo saga. I think that's the first time I've heard of the Solo cut.
Yeah, the Solo
pretty great.
Saga.
Yes.
They called there was the machete. Machete order. I think, the machete order. Now we're talking about the Solo Saga order. I'm going to have to do that sometime. I like that idea.
Solo cut. Yeah.
Well, now that that there's enough movies in the Star Wars canon now that you can kind of do that kind of thing in the same way that with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can watch the Iron Man story, you watch the Captain America story, you can break it up into certain. You can watch the Scarlet Witch saga, and you can make those choices. And when I realized I can do the solo story and just see the story of my favorite character in the entire series, from young to his death, and it works really well.
Since you mentioned New Year's Eve, I got to ask, have you ever blown up the Death Star at midnight?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Jimmy Mac?
Is that a firework?
That's a cue.
Oh, yeah. This is an old tradition of mine, going back to the 90s, actually, with VHS. My family and I would stay at home on New Year's Eve, and we would press play on New Hope and time it out so that the Death Star blows up at exactly the stroke of midnight. We've been doing it now for 20 years. All the information and instructions are available at rebelforceradio.com. If you care to mix it up a little bit this year on New Year's. If you're not doing the Laugh It Up Fuzzball saga, you can...
No, it worked that way because you just got to start early, and then you got to time it for the Return of the Jedi Death Star blow up at midnight, and so you can watch the last movie in the series, which is Force Awakens.
You can do that. You can do that. Or I would just time it out so he says Laugh It Up Fuzzball right at midnight.
Sure.
So that's how you know. No, but you're right. And we have done it once. We did it with Return of the Jedi to have the Death Star blow up at midnight. But there's just something so special about A New Hope is after the Death Star explodes, it's minimal dialogue and the music kicks in and there's a big celebration and it just all seems to work real nicely.
That's some deep fandom you got going on.
Oh, well, I'm not the one doing the solo cuts. I would take that as a compliment.
We all have our deep fandom, I guess. It's true.
Yes, to each our own. There's one other thing I want to throw at you here while we can, Otis. It's a tradition. It's a traditional thing we do here at Rebel Force Radio. We have a set of questions. And these questions were actually compiled by Yoda himself. This is the Yoda questionnaire. And we offer these questions to...
Whoa, sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I had one of those. Mine was a two-legged kid, but...
You have to edit that out. That's pretty loud. Sorry about that.
No, don't worry.
No, that's fine. No, we're dog people around here, or wampas or whatever you got on your... hanging out in your house. But we have these questions, and they're just very straightforward questions about the Star Wars saga, and also very fun when we throw them all at you at once. So, so what do you say, Otis? How about we toss the Yoda questionnaire in your direction right now?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Jason, do you have the questionnaire handy?
I do.
Okay.
So we'll start off. Yeah. We'll start off fairly easy. Let's do it. Otis, what is your favorite Star Wars character?
I already spoiled it. It's definitely Han Solo. I guess the secondary would be any Jawa I'm drawing at the time.
Oh, okay. So your own Jawa.
But definitely Han Solo.
And do you have a least favorite Star Wars character?
Least favorite Star Wars character. I guess I'll open this can of worms. It's Rose Tico.
Oh, wow. You really stand on an island there.
Yeah,
that's a bold thing to say. I've never heard anyone say anything like that before.
No one has the guts.
What's next? Jar Jar?
Actually, no, I like Jar Jar. I do. I have a 6-foot cardboard standee of Jar Jar from KB Toys. So I'm.
Hey, we love and appreciate all answers and all fans here.
I know I'm going to catch you for that, but just let me defend my answer here. My objections are, again, from the perspective of a writer. I think she's a poorly written character.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There are no wrong answers.
No.
All right.
The Yoda questionnaire.
No, none. What is your favorite Star Wars line? When you go back and you listen to the movies, what's the line that is your favorite that you never get tired of hearing?
It's actually from Star Wars Episode 1. It's my favorite line in the entire series. I think it's the most profound thing that George ever wrote into the series. It's your focus determines your reality. I think about that line all the time because it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, no, you and me are connecting on many different levels here. Watching Star Wars movies on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
The Phantom Menace.
Otis is going to be co-hosting Rebel Force Radio here next week, I think.
Let me tell you something, Otis. There was a time when I was I work in radio, and the station I was working at for CBS closed down. And I went through probably the most extensive period of being unemployed in my adult life. And I remember I had gone through a series of job interviews with a broadcast company, and I was shopping. I was grocery shopping, and the phone call came in on my cell phone, and it was the manager, and he told me that they were going in a different direction. And I really thought I had the job locked down, and I was looking forward to getting back to work because you go through a series of depressions when you're not working. And I just remember hanging up, and instead of being devastated, I literally, well, not literally, but I heard the words of Qui-Gon Jinn in my head.
Your focus determines your reality.
And it really resonated with me in a big way and helped me get through the disappointment of not finding a job, saving me from months of depression. And it really instructed me to keep my chin up and to just be assured that as long as I keep a positive mental attitude, things will turn out positively for me in my life. And they did, and everything has worked out wonderfully since then. I have no complaints. My life is full of fulfillment and love and joy. And it's all because of the words of Qui-Gon Jinn. The focus determines your reality.
That's
I mean, really, it's a very...
No, it is. It's great.
It's all it takes.
Yeah.
It's
good philosophy.
A very Zen thing to consider, and something that I've been able to really appreciate, especially in my adult life. I don't think it resonated me as much when I first saw The Phantom Menace. I was still a young dude. I wasn't even a father yet. And then, as you grow and you gain all these responsibilities, like little nuggets of information like that really help you get through your day. So as a matter of fact, I posted that as Monday Motivation on the Rebel Force Radio Twitter account last week. Your focus determines your reality. So good job, Otis.
All right. And is there any more? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Any more questions?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, I just was pontificating. That happens sometimes during the
I've heard the show. Yeah.
I like this guy. All right.
What? Yeah, you're fit. Otis, you are really fitting in right now.
Yeah. All right. What Star Wars line makes you cringe? Do you not like? Do you, how'd they write that?
Oh, geez. You're gonna make me do it again, aren't you? You're gonna make me.
Uh-oh. I'm sensing some Tico. Tico's coming.
You know what it is.
All right. Give it to us, though. Give it to us.
It's I've only seen the movie once, so I'm probably gonna have to paraphrase it, but it's something like, we don't fight the things we hate, we save the things we love, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what? See, now I have to correct you because you're wrong. That's not the worst Rose Tico line. The worst line is when she says she's doing talking.
Doing talking. I don't remember that. I must have blocked it.
She gets nervous when she meets Finn.
Oh, well, who would?
She says something about their conversation, refers to it as doing talking.
I work behind pipes all day. Doing talking with resistance heroes is not my forte.
And, yeah. So that is the worst.
I own the movie on iTunes. I just haven't watched it again.
Did you see it in the theater?
I did. I saw it. I've seen. It's the only Star Wars movie I've only seen once. I saw it in the theater on opening night.
And then you bought it on iTunes, though.
Well, here's the thing. I sometimes buy movies on iTunes or Blu-ray if they have just for the extras, the bonus features, commentaries and stuff.
Yeah.
I love behind the scenes stuff, and so I bought it thinking, well, I'll watch the behind the scenes stuff and I'll get something from that, because even bad movies have some good stuff in the behind the scenes stuff, and you can glean some storytelling.
I'm going to figure out why this happened.
And exactly. I mean, I bought the Battlefield Earth DVD for that purpose. But
my God,
I still haven't watched the Last Jedi stuff.
Well, you know what's hysterical along those lines? If you're a Batman fan, listen to the watch the documentary on the Batman and Robin movie, and listen to
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher just totally he just dishes on that whole situation. It's great.
He's so honest and open. I love it. It's great. Yeah, totally.
That sounds good.
Oh yeah, it's just a total description of a dumpster fire.
Yep. I love how he talks about how the studio made him do things because it was toyetic.
Yeah,
you know?
toyetic.
Yeah.
They had the people right there from Kenner,
terrible.
on the set of the movie as they're making it, picking and choosing and saying, "No, you got to use this. This is more toyetic." Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. We just got a couple more here. What Star Wars moment always makes you smile?
It can't be Jawa. It can't be Jawa. I'm putting that in there. Yeah. Non-Jawa answer. No Utini, no nothing. I'm taking all that away from you.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, which one? Which moment always just gives you that little warm feeling? You know, it makes you smile, gives you that. You just always love. Oh, I love this part. It's coming up.
Man, you really did, because there's for the movies in the series that I love, there's so many. There's so many. The Force Awakens to me has probably the most moments like that. I mean,
well, give me one of them.
The moment that Rey and Finn are running towards the ship to get off of Jakku, it blows up and they're like, you know, the garbage will do, or whatever.
Garbage will do, yeah.
And they turn, and you see the Millennium Falcon, and you hear that music. That's a smiling moment for me.
There you go.
Just you describing it. This is no BS. I got goosebumps. It is such a great movie. All right, which Star Wars moment makes you sad? Now that could be both, whether you're sad because you're you can interpret that any way you want. Which Star Wars moment makes you sad?
I'll go with the kind interpretation. Okay. It's definitely in Empire. It's the moment when Han, after Han has been frozen in carbonite, it's the moment when the Ugnaughts push over the carbonite block and it hits the deck and it cuts to Leia, and you can just see the pain in her eyes. It's one of the most devastating moments in the series to me.
That's a
Her
first.
man has become. That's a good one, because the dull metal thud.
Yeah, that sound.
The carbonite block hits the floor of the carbon freezing chamber, and she's like, "My man is a paperweight."
Yep.
All right, we've got one last one for you, and if there was another Star Wars movie made, and you were cast in it, and George Lucas directed it, what would you like to hear him say to you right after he says, "Cut," on your last scene?
Probably, you should have been faster and more intense.
There it is. There it is.
Wow.
Otis Frampton, ladies and gentlemen.
He's not fast nor intense. He's Otis.
You got to check out. You got to check out the website, otisframpton.com. So it's like Peter Frampton, only Otis. The spelling, no relation, right?
Yeah, and I'm not from the South, by the way. Howdy was
yes, that was theater.
Oh
of the
yeah, we did give you kind of a Steve Glosson sort of Tennessee honey kind of sound.
Yeah, we laid the molasses on pretty thick.
Well, it is. I can't tell you how nice it is to get to know you, Otis, and to see your work and the type of Star Wars fan that you are. We really, really appreciate it. Congratulations on all the success you've had and continued success. We'd love to have you back on Rebel Force Radio just to talk some more Star Wars with you. And
that'd be great. Thank you very much for having me on. It's like I said in my email back to you. I subscribe to the show. I listen. It's a good show, great show. I really love hearing people talk about Star Wars on your show. So thank you so much for having me on, so I could do a little bit of it myself.
Yeah. Awesome, Otis, my man. Otis, do you get a lot of people throwing Animal House?
The Animal House, yes.
All the time?
Yeah.
Wait till
Yeah.
Otis sees us. He loves us.
Otis, my man. I get it all the time.
My man. Yeah, Otis Day in the Nights. Great movie. Great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us in the Cantina, Otis. Much appreciated. OtisFrampton.com is the place. And go check out those JAWA Adventures. I really think one day they'd make a great series of trading cards, all of these covers you did. So maybe someday. Fingers crossed.
Someday. Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Man. Thank you.
Thanks, Otis.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Wait till Otis sees us! He loved us! Rebel Force Radio.